Every night at exactly 9:15 p.m., a little girl sat alone at an abandoned station, holding a dirty white puppy in her arms. No parents, no luggage, no food, and when one broken rancher finally asked her why she kept coming back, her answer changed his life forever. The girl at Willow Creek Station. The cold wind swept through the tiny town of Willow Creek like a lonely ghost. Most people in town hurried home before sunset. The streets emptied fast, store lights dimmed, and silence covered everything except the distant whistle of the midnight train. But every night, without fail, one small figure appeared at the old station platform. A little girl. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her dress was faded and dusty, her shoes were worn through at the toes, and her blonde hair looked like it had been brushed days ago. In her tiny arms she carried the same trembling white puppy every single night. And every single night, she waited. People noticed her. Of course they did, but small towns had a dangerous habit of minding their own business. She probably has family nearby. Someone must be watching her. Not our problem. That's what they told themselves. The station master had tried speaking to her once. "What are you waiting for, sweetheart?" But the girl only looked down at the puppy and whispered, "My mama." After that, nobody asked again. Until Eli Carter came back to town. Eli used to be one of the strongest ranchers in Texas. 10 years earlier, people respected him. Some even feared him. He could break wild horses, survive droughts, and work 16 hours under the burning sun without complaining once. But life had a cruel way of humbling proud men. First, his wife died from pneumonia during the harsh winter. Then his son left home after a terrible argument. And finally, the bank took half his ranch after 2 seasons of failed cattle. Now, at 46 years old, Eli looked like a shadow of the man he once was. His shoulders sagged under invisible weight. His beard had gone gray too early, and the sadness in his eyes never seemed to leave. That evening, Eli stopped by the station only because his truck had broken down nearby. Rain clouds gathered overhead as he walked toward the waiting area for shelter. That's when he saw her. The little girl sat on the wooden bench hugging the puppy tightly beneath her thin sweater. She looked freezing. Eli frowned. "Kid," he muttered, "where are your parents?" The girl looked up slowly. Her eyes were large, tired, and far too old for a child. "I'm waiting for my mama." Eli sighed softly. "What's your name?" "Abby. And your mama's coming tonight." She nodded immediately. She promised. Eli glanced around the nearly empty station. Only 2 travelers remained inside. Neither paid attention to the child. "You been here long?" "Every night." That answer hit him strangely hard. "Every night? How long have you been waiting?" Abby thought carefully. "Since the leaves were falling." Eli's chest tightened. Autumn. It was now the middle of spring. This child had been coming here for months. Alone. A cold gust swept through the platform, and Abby shivered violently. The puppy whimpered in her arms. Eli removed his heavy brown jacket. "Here." She hesitated. "My mama says I shouldn't take things from strangers." For the first time in months, Eli almost smiled. "Your mama sounds smart." Abby gave a tiny nod. "But she's not here." Those words landed like stones. Eli slowly placed the jacket beside her anyway. "You'll freeze otherwise." After a moment, Abby wrapped herself in it. The coat nearly swallowed her whole. The puppy instantly curled deeper into the warmth. "What's the dog's name?" Eli asked. "Dusty." "Why Dusty?" "Because he was covered in dust when I found him." Eli sat beside her with a tired grunt. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Abby suddenly asked, "Are you lonely too?" Eli blinked. "What makes you think that?" "You have the same eyes as the people who wait." The question unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Children noticed things adults ignored. Eli looked toward the dark railroad tracks stretching endlessly into the distance. "Yeah," he finally admitted. "I guess I am." Abby nodded like she understood perfectly. Then she asked the question that nearly broke him. Did the person you love leave too? Eli felt something twist painfully in his chest. He hadn't spoken about Clara or his son Daniel in years. Not to anyone, yet somehow this tiny girl had reached straight into the wounds he buried deepest. My wife passed away, he said quietly. Abby lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. And my son? Eli paused. He left after we fought. Will he come back? I don't know. The little girl gently stroked Dusty's fur. I think people come back when they know someone still waits for them. Eli stared at her in silence. What kind of child says something like that? Thunder rumbled overhead. The station lights flickered once. Then the distant sound of an approaching train echoed through the valley. Abby immediately stood up. Hope exploded across her face. That's her train. Passengers began gathering near the platform as the train slowly rolled into the station with screeching brakes and clouds of steam. Eli watched Abby carefully scan every face stepping off. An elderly couple, a businessman, two soldiers, a tired mother carrying a baby. But no one stopped for Abby. No one recognized her. Still, she kept searching desperately. Train passengers passed around her like water around a stone. Finally, the conductor shouted, "All aboard!" The train began moving again. And Abby's hopeful expression slowly collapsed. Just like it probably had every night for months. She sat back down silently. Dusty whimpered and licked her hand. Eli swallowed hard. Abby. But the little girl forced a smile before he could continue. She'll come tomorrow. His heart cracked hearing the certainty in her voice. Not anger. Not doubt. Just pure belief. The kind only children possess. Eli looked toward the ticket office. Where's your father? Abby went quiet. Very quiet. I don't have one anymore. Before Eli could ask more, the station master approached. Evening, Carter. Eli nodded. The older man lowered his voice. She's back again. Looks like it. The station master sighed heavily. No idea where she lives. Social services came twice, but she disappears before they arrive. You never followed her. Tried once. Lost her near the woods east of town. Eli frowned deeply. The woods east of town held only abandoned farms and broken cabins. No child should have been living there. Rain finally began pouring outside. The station master locked the ticket window. Poor thing, he muttered before heading out. Eli looked back at Abby. She was trying hard not to cry. You hungry? He asked. She instantly shook her head. But her stomach growled loudly a second later. Eli stood. Come on. I can't leave. What if your mama comes? Abby nodded quickly. Eli thought for a second. Then he walked to the old snack machine near the waiting room and bought the last sandwich inside along with a carton of milk. When he returned, Abby stared at the food like it was treasure. This is for me, unless Dusty eats sandwiches. For the first time, Abby giggled softly. It was such a small sound. But somehow it lit up the cold station more than the flickering bulbs overhead. She ate carefully, giving tiny pieces to the puppy between bites. Eli watched quietly. A strange feeling settled inside him. He hadn't cared about anyone in a very long time. Not since losing everything. Yet sitting beside this abandoned little girl, he felt something waking up again. Something painful. Something human. After Abby finished eating, her eyelids began drooping. You should go home, Eli said gently. I can't miss her. What if I come tomorrow with you? Abby studied him carefully. You promise? The word hit Eli harder than expected. Promises. He used to make those. Before life taught him how easily promises break. Still, he nodded. I promise. Abby finally smiled. A real smile this time. And somehow that tiny smile felt more valuable than anything Eli had owned in years. He walked her toward the station exit. Rain poured heavily outside now. Where do you live? Abby hesitated, then pointed toward the dark woods beyond town. Eli's stomach tightened. You live out there. Another small nod. Who takes care of you? Abby looked down. I do. Eli stared at her, horrified. Before he could say another word, she suddenly stepped closer and hugged him tightly around the waist. The gesture caught him completely off guard. "Thank you for talking to me," she whispered. Then she ran into the rain holding Dusty close. Eli stood frozen beneath the station lights watching the tiny figure disappear into darkness. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Not the next morning, not the next afternoon, and definitely not when 9:15 p.m. arrived again. Because deep down, Eli knew he was going back to that station. And something told him, the little girl was hiding a secret far bigger than anyone imagined. The cabin in the woods. The next day, Eli Carter tried to focus on work. But he couldn't, not while the image of that little girl kept replaying in his mind. Her trembling hands, her hopeful eyes searching every passenger. The way she said, she promised. By sunset, Eli gave up pretending. At exactly 8:40 p.m., he climbed into his repaired truck and drove toward Willow Creek Station. Rain from the night before had turned the roads muddy. Wind bent the old trees along the roadside, and thunder growled somewhere far away. When Eli arrived, the station platform looked almost empty again. And there she was. Abby sat on the same wooden bench wearing Eli's oversized jacket, holding Dusty beneath her chin. The moment she saw him, her face lit up. "You came back." Eli surprised himself by smiling. "Told you I would." Children noticed broken promises. He had learned that the hard way. Abby scooted over to make room for him on the bench. "You were right on time. Guess I didn't wanna disappoint you." Dusty barked softly as if agreeing. Eli handed Abby a paper bag. "What's this?" she asked carefully. "Dinner." Her eyes widened when she opened it. A warm chicken sandwich, an apple, and 2 chocolate cookies. "For me." "You keep asking that, because nobody gives me things." The sentence was simple, too simple, like she'd accepted that fact long ago. Eli sat beside her as Abby ate slowly, carefully saving pieces for Dusty again. "You always feed the dog first?" he asked. "He gets scared when he's hungry." Eli looked at the tiny puppy curled in her lap. "What about you?" Abby shrugged. "I'm used to it." That answer nearly shattered him. The train whistle echoed again in the distance. Immediately Abby stood. Hope returned to her face like sunrise after darkness. Eli watched carefully this time. The train arrived. Passengers stepped off one by one. Abby searched every single face desperately. But once again, no mother came. The last passenger exited. The doors closed, and the train disappeared into the night. Abby didn't cry. That was somehow worse. She just stood silently staring at the empty tracks. Finally she whispered, "Maybe tomorrow." Eli couldn't take it anymore. "Abby, where exactly is your mother?" The little girl hugged Dusty tighter. "She left on the train a long time ago." "When?" "A few months. And she told you to wait here every night." Abby nodded. "She said she'd come back after finding us a better place to live." Eli felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of mother leaves a 7-year-old alone for months? But then he saw Abby's trembling lip. And he stopped himself. Because no matter what the truth was, this child still loved her mother. Children always do, even when they shouldn't have to suffer for it. "Come on," Eli said softly. "I'm taking you home tonight." Abby stepped back immediately. "I can't." "Why not?" "What if Mama comes while I'm gone?" Eli crouched down until they were eye level. "Then I'll bring you back tomorrow. But I need to know you're safe." Abby hesitated. The storm clouds overhead darkened further. Finally she whispered, "Okay." Eli's truck rattled down the muddy road leading east of town. Abby sat quietly beside him while Dusty slept in her lap. Streetlights disappeared quickly. Soon only forests surrounded them. Tall black trees swayed violently in the wind. Eli frowned. "Nobody should be living out here." Abby pointed ahead. "There." At first Eli barely saw it. An old broken cabin hidden between trees. One side of the roof had partially collapsed. Windows were boarded up unevenly, and the porch leaned dangerously to one side. Eli stared in disbelief. "You live here?" Abby nodded. The truck headlights illuminated rusted tools, broken furniture, and piles of firewood outside. Eli killed the engine slowly. "Who stays here with you?" "No one now." Now. That word caught his attention immediately. "Who used to?" Abby climbed out of the truck without answering. Eli followed her carefully toward the cabin. Inside, the air smelled damp and cold. A tiny lantern flickered near the corner beside an old mattress covered with blankets. Cans of soup lined a shelf. Rain dripped steadily through holes in the ceiling into metal buckets below. Eli's stomach twisted painfully. This wasn't a home, it was survival, and somehow this little girl had managed it alone. "You've been here by yourself this whole time." Abby nodded quietly. "How do you eat?" "I collect bottles sometimes." Mrs. Green from the bakery throws away bread at night behind her shop. Eli clenched his jaw. The town had seen her. Every single day. And nobody truly looked. Dusty suddenly barked toward the back room. Abby froze. Fear flashed across her face. Eli noticed immediately. "What is it?" "Sometimes people come here." "What people?" "I don't know." Eli stepped protectively in front of her. The wind slammed something against the cabin outside. Bang! Abby jumped violently. Eli moved toward the back door carefully. Another loud noise echoed. Then silence. He opened the door suddenly. Only tree branches scraping against the wall. Still, something about the cabin felt wrong. Unsafe. Very unsafe. Eli returned inside. "You can't stay here anymore." "But Mama said." "I know what she said." Abby's eyes filled instantly. "She promised she'd come back." Eli's voice softened. "And maybe she will. But until then, you need somewhere warm." Abby looked around the broken cabin. This place was all she had left of her mother. Eli could see that. Every cracked wall held memories. Every blanket, every tiny object. Leaving meant admitting the truth she feared most. That maybe her mother wasn't coming back. Suddenly headlights flashed outside. Eli turned sharply toward the window. Another vehicle approached slowly through the trees. Abby panicked instantly. "Hide the lantern." Eli blew it out immediately. Darkness swallowed the cabin. The vehicle stopped outside. A truck door slammed. Heavy footsteps approached. Eli's instinct screamed danger. He motioned Abby silently behind him. Then a rough male voice called from outside. "Anybody in there?" Abby trembled violently. Eli whispered, "You know him." She nodded slowly. Fear filled her eyes. "He comes sometimes." "What does he want?" "He looks for things." Eli's jaw tightened. Another bang hit the door. "Open up." Dusty growled softly. Eli stepped forward. "Who are you?" he shouted. Silence followed. Then the voice changed instantly. "Sorry. Wrong cabin." Footsteps retreated. Truck engine started again. But Eli didn't move. Because he knew liars when he heard them. The vehicle finally disappeared down the road. Only then did Abby breathe again. "Who was that?" Eli asked quietly. "I don't know his name." "Did he hurt you?" "No, but Mama was scared of him." Every alarm inside Eli went off. "What do you mean?" Before Abby could answer, Dusty suddenly barked wildly near the fireplace. The puppy scratched at loose wooden boards beneath the stone bricks. Abby frowned. "What's wrong, Dusty?" Eli knelt beside the fireplace. One floorboard looked different from the others. Newer. Recently moved. Using an old tool nearby, Eli pried the board upward slowly. Underneath was a small metal box. Abby gasped. "I never saw that before." Eli opened it carefully. Inside were old photographs, a silver necklace, and a stack of letters tied together with blue ribbon. On top sat one folded envelope with a single word written across it. Abby. Eli looked at the little girl. Her tiny hands shook as he handed her the envelope. "Do you want me to read it?" Abby nodded silently. Eli unfolded the letter carefully. And the moment he read the first line, the color drained from his face. Because the letter began with 5 terrifying words. "If you are reading this, I may already be dead. The letter beneath the floor. The storm outside grew louder. Rain hammered against the cabin roof while thunder shook the windows. But inside, everything felt frozen. Eli stared at the letter in his trembling hands. Abby hugged Dusty tightly beside him, waiting. "What does it say?" she whispered. Eli swallowed hard and continued reading. "My sweet Abby, if you are reading this, then something terrible has happened, and I may already be gone. Please believe me when I say I never wanted to leave you alone. I tried to protect you the only way I knew how." Abby's eyes widened. "That's Mama's handwriting." Eli kept reading slowly. "There are dangerous men looking for your father's money. Your father made mistakes before he died, and now those men believe I know where something valuable is hidden. I don't know who to trust anymore. If I disappear, never tell anyone about the red notebook. And never trust the man with the snake tattoo on his hand." Eli immediately remembered the man outside. The rough voice. The late-night truck. His chest tightened. "Abby, have you ever seen a tattoo on that man?" She nodded instantly. "A black snake." Eli cursed under his breath. The letter continued. "Baby girl, if I don't come back by spring, go to Willow Creek Station every night at 9:15. Someone good will eventually notice you. Someone kind." Eli stopped reading. His throat tightened unexpectedly. Because somehow, that woman had known her daughter would need saving. And somehow, Abby had waited long enough for him to appear. The little girl looked up anxiously. "Keep reading." Eli nodded. "There's one person left who might help you. His name is Walter Grayson. He owns the Old Horse Ranch near Black River. Tell him Evelyn Harper sent you. And Abby, never think for one second that I stopped loving you. I came back every chance I could. I watched you from farther away than you know. I'm sorry I couldn't keep you safe. Love forever, Mama." Silence filled the cabin. Only the storm made noise. Now, Abby stared at the letter with tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "She did come back," she whispered. Eli's heart broke hearing it. Because this child had spent months believing she'd been abandoned. But her mother had been trying to protect her all along. "Who's Walter Grayson?" Abby asked. Eli's expression darkened. "I know him." "You do? He used to own one of the biggest ranches in the county. Can we go see him?" Eli hesitated. Walter Grayson had disappeared from public life years ago after his son died in a rodeo accident. Rumors said the old man barely spoke to anyone anymore. But if Abby's mother trusted him, maybe there was a reason. Before Eli could answer, headlights flashed outside again. Closer this time, much closer. Eli instantly blew out the lantern. The truck had returned. Abby grabbed his arm in terror. "It's him." Heavy boots crunched outside the cabin. Then came a second voice. "You sure the kid's here?" "Positive," the rough voice replied. Eli peeked carefully through the cracked window. Two men stood outside in raincoats beside the truck, and one of them had a black snake tattoo crawling across his hand. Eli's blood turned cold. The man from the letter. The tattooed man lit a cigarette and scanned the cabin. "She can't hide forever," he muttered. The second man laughed. "She's 7 years old. Doesn't matter. The notebook matters." Eli turned back toward Abby immediately. "Where's the red notebook?" Abby looked confused. "I don't know. Think carefully." She shook her head fearfully. "Mama never showed me." Bang! The cabin door rattled violently. "Open the door." Dusty barked furiously. Eli's ranch instincts kicked in instantly. "Listen to me carefully," he whispered to Abby. He pointed toward a tiny back window. "When I say run, you run into the woods and don't stop." "But what about you?" "I'll handle them." Abby's eyes filled with panic. "You can't fight both of them." Eli gave a grim smile. "Kid, I used to wrestle bulls bigger than those idiots." Another violent bang shook the cabin. The lock splintered slightly. "Hurry up in there." Eli grabbed an old fireplace poker like a weapon. Then he looked at Abby. "Ready?" She nodded shakily. Crash! The front door burst open. The tattooed man stepped inside first. Tall, bearded, cruel eyes. "Well now," he sneered. "Looks like we found her." The second man entered behind him carrying a flashlight. Then both men noticed Eli. Their expressions changed instantly. "Who the hell are you?" Snake Tattoo demanded. Eli stood firm. "Wrong cabin. Leave." The man smirked. "I don't think so." His eyes moved toward Abby. "There's our little runaway." Abby hid behind Eli immediately. Snake Tattoo stepped closer. "Listen carefully, sweetheart. We just wanna ask a few questions." "She doesn't know anything," Eli growled. The man chuckled darkly. "That woman sure caused trouble before she vanished." Abby's voice cracked. "What did you do to my mama?" For one brief second, the men exchanged a look. And that tiny moment told Eli everything. They knew more than they admitted. Way more. Snake Tattoo crouched slightly. "Your mama stole something important." "She didn't steal anything." "Maybe not." His smile vanished. "But your daddy did." Eli noticed the second man slowly moving toward the back exit to block escape. Bad move. Very bad move. Because Eli Carter had spent most of his life fighting men stronger than him. And broken men stop fearing pain. Snake Tattoo reached for Abby. Eli swung the fireplace poker directly into the man's ribs. Crack. The man screamed and collapsed sideways into a table. Before the second man could react, Eli punched him straight in the jaw. The flashlight flew across the room. Chaos exploded instantly. Abby screamed. Dusty barked wildly. Snake Tattoo lunged back up with a knife in his hand. "You stupid old man." Eli shoved Abby toward the back window. "Run." Abby crawled through instantly clutching Dusty. The second man grabbed Eli from behind. Snake Tattoo swung the knife. Slash. Pain ripped across Eli's shoulder. But adrenaline kept him moving. Eli slammed backward into the wall, crushing the second man beneath his weight. Then he grabbed a lantern and smashed it directly at Snake Tattoo's feet. Glass shattered. Flames burst across the floorboards. "Fire!" The second man shouted. Smoke filled the cabin rapidly. Snake Tattoo cursed violently. "You're dead, old man." But Eli already dove through the back window into the storm. Rain soaked him instantly. Ahead, he spotted Abby running through the trees with Dusty in her arms. "This way," he shouted. Behind them, the burning cabin glowed orange against the dark woods. The two men stumbled outside yelling angrily. Then a gunshot exploded through the night. Bang! A bullet slammed into a tree inches from Eli's head. Abby cried out in fear. Eli grabbed her hand. "Run faster." Branches whipped across their faces as they sprinted through mud and darkness. Another gunshot echoed behind them. Bang! Then suddenly, Abby tripped hard down a muddy hill. The red metal box flew from her hands, spilling photographs and letters everywhere. Eli rushed toward her, but Abby wasn't looking at the scattered papers anymore. She was staring at something else. Something half buried beneath the mud near an old tree root. A small red notebook. The exact notebook from the letter. Abby looked up at Eli in shock. "I think Mama hid it here, and somewhere behind them in the woods." The men were getting closer. The secret inside the notebook. Rain poured through the dark forest like icy needles. Abby's small hands trembled as she picked up the muddy red notebook from the ground. For a second, nobody moved. Not Abby, not Eli. Even the sounds of the men chasing them seemed distant now. Because both of them understood one thing immediately. This notebook was the reason Abby's mother disappeared. "Put it in your jacket," Eli whispered urgently. Abby shoved the notebook beneath Eli's oversized coat just as another flashlight beam swept through the trees behind them. "There!" one of the men shouted. Eli grabbed Abby's hand. "Move!" They sprinted deeper into the woods. Mud sucked at their shoes while tree branches clawed across their faces. Dusty whimpered in Abby's arms, soaked and shivering. Eli's injured shoulder burned badly now. Blood soaked through his shirt where the knife had cut him. But he ignored it. Right now only one thing mattered. Keeping Abby alive. Another gunshot cracked through the darkness. Bang! A bullet struck dirt beside Eli's boot. "Keep running," he barked. Ahead, the forest finally opened toward an old river bridge. The wooden structure looked ancient and unstable above the rushing black water below. Abby stopped suddenly. "We can't cross that. We don't have a choice." Behind them, flashlight beams moved closer between the trees. Snake Tattoo's angry voice echoed through the storm. "You can't hide forever." Eli quickly led Abby onto the bridge. The old wood creaked dangerously beneath their weight. Halfway across, one of the boards snapped under Eli's foot. Crack! He nearly fell through. Abby screamed and grabbed his arm just in time. "You okay?" she cried. Eli nodded through gritted teeth. "Keep going." The bridge swayed violently in the wind as they finally reached the other side. Eli looked back once. The two men had just reached the entrance of the bridge. Perfect. Eli grabbed an old loose support rope hanging nearby and wrapped it around one of the cracked wooden posts. Then he kicked hard against the weakened beam. Snap! The bridge groaned loudly. "What are you doing?" Abby asked. "Buying time." Eli slammed his boot against the support again. The entire center section suddenly collapsed. Wood exploded downward into the raging river below. Snake Tattoo barely jumped back in time. "You idiot!" the second man shouted at him. Now the broken bridge separated them completely. For the moment, Snake Tattoo pointed furiously across the river. "You think this saves you?" Eli stared back coldly. "It'll slow you down." Then he turned and hurried Abby into the darkness before the men could find another way around. An hour later, they finally reached Eli's ranch. The old farmhouse sat alone beneath rolling hills outside town. It wasn't much anymore. The paint peeled from the walls. The barn leaned slightly west from years of storms. But it was warm, safe, and for Abby, it looked like a castle. Eli locked every door behind them. Dusty immediately curled near the fireplace while Abby stood silently in the living room looking around at faded family photos hanging on the walls. One picture caught her attention. A smiling woman beside a younger Eli. And a teenage boy standing between them. "Is that your family?" Eli looked at the photo quietly. "Used to be. She's beautiful." "That's Clara. What happened to her?" Eli stared at the fire. "She got sick one winter." Abby lowered her eyes. "My mama used to sing when I got scared." Eli swallowed hard. So did Clara. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Eli remembered the notebook. He carefully removed it from inside the jacket. The small red cover was soaked but still intact. Abby sat beside him nervously. "Do you think Mama hid secrets in there?" "We're about to find out." Eli opened the notebook slowly. Inside were pages filled with numbers, names, addresses, bank account records, and handwritten notes. Eli's face darkened with every page. "This isn't just money," he muttered. "What is it?" He looked at her carefully. "Your father was involved with dangerous people." Abby's eyes widened. "My daddy wasn't bad." Eli softened immediately. "I'm not saying he was." But the notebook clearly showed illegal payments connected to land deals, stolen cattle, and missing cash from several ranch businesses across Texas. One name appeared repeatedly: Victor Hale. Next to it were dozens of payments circled in red ink. Eli frowned deeply. He recognized the name instantly. Victor Hale wasn't some random criminal. He was one of the wealthiest businessmen in the county. Owner of trucking companies, land developments, and half the rail businesses around Willow Creek. Publicly, people respected him. Privately, rumors followed him everywhere, and suddenly everything made sense. Snake Tattoo wasn't working alone. He worked for Hale. Abby pointed toward a folded paper hidden in the notebook's back cover. "What's that?" Eli unfolded it carefully. It was a map, a detailed map of land outside Willow Creek. One area had a red X marked beside an abandoned warehouse near the railroad tracks. Underneath it, Evelyn Harper had written 3 chilling words. "Proof is buried." Eli's pulse quickened. Proof of what? Corruption. Murder. Before he could think further, A vehicle engine sounded outside the ranch. Both Eli and Abby froze. Headlights slowly swept across the windows. Abby panicked instantly. They found us. Eli extinguished the lamp immediately. The truck stopped outside. Silence followed. Then, knock, knock, knock. Not violent this time. Slow. Controlled. Eli grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace carefully. Stay behind me. Another knock came. Then an older voice spoke calmly through the door. Eli Carter. Eli frowned. I know that voice. Walter Grayson, the man outside said. And I believe you have a little girl named Abby with you. Abby gasped softly. The man from Mama's letter. Eli didn't lower the rifle yet. How do you know about Abby? A long pause followed. Then Walter answered quietly. Because her mother came to me 3 months ago. The night before she vanished. Eli and Abby looked at each other in shock. Outside, thunder rumbled again across the dark Texas sky. And suddenly, the mystery surrounding Abby's mother was becoming far more dangerous than either of them imagined. The truth about Evelyn Harper. The storm had finally begun to fade. Only soft rain tapped against the ranch windows now. Eli kept the rifle aimed at the front door for several long seconds while Abby stood clutching Dusty tightly beside him. Outside, the old man waited patiently beneath the porch light. Finally, Eli spoke. If this is some kind of trick, Walter. It's not, the old voice interrupted calmly. But if Victor Hale's men tracked you here, we don't have much time. That sentence changed everything. Eli slowly unlocked the door. An elderly man stepped inside wearing a dark raincoat and weathered cowboy hat. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and although age had bent his shoulders slightly, his sharp blue eyes still carried authority. Walter Grayson. Abby stared at him nervously. You knew my mama. Walter removed his hat slowly. Yes, sweetheart. Emotion flickered across his face the moment he looked at her. You look exactly like Evelyn. Abby's eyes instantly filled with tears. She's alive, isn't she? Walter hesitated too long. And Abby noticed. Children always noticed. She's dead, Abby whispered weakly. Walter lowered his gaze. I don't know. That answer hurt almost as much. Abby quietly sat beside the fireplace hugging Dusty close while Eli stepped nearer to Walter. You better start talking, Eli muttered. Walter nodded grimly. 3 months ago, Evelyn Harper came to my ranch terrified. She believed Victor Hale was hunting her. Because of the notebook. Walter's eyes widened slightly. So you found it. Eli pulled the red notebook from the table. Walter stared at it like a ghost from the past. She actually kept it. What exactly is this thing? Eli demanded. Walter sat heavily into a chair. Evidence. Of what? Murder. The room fell silent. Even the rain outside seemed to stop. Walter continued quietly. Years ago, Victor Hale used his trucking companies to move illegal money through ranch businesses and railroad shipments. Your father, he said gently to Abby, worked for him. Abby looked confused. My daddy worked with bad people. Walter sighed deeply. At first, I think he believed it was honest work. But eventually he discovered Hale was stealing land from struggling ranchers, threatening families, even arranging accidents. Eli clenched his jaw, and Abby's father tried exposing him. Walter nodded. He gathered proof secretly inside that notebook. Abby whispered softly, is that why he died? Walter's silence answered her question. Tears rolled down Abby's cheeks instantly. No. Walter leaned forward painfully. Your father wasn't a criminal, Abby. He made mistakes trusting dangerous people. But in the end, he tried to do the right thing. Abby buried her face into Dusty's fur and cried quietly. Eli looked away for a moment, giving her space. Because he understood grief too well. Walter continued. After your father died, Evelyn discovered Hale wanted the notebook destroyed. That's when she came to me for help. What happened next? She planned to leave town with Abby. Walter's expression darkened. But someone betrayed her. Eli's eyes narrowed immediately. Who? I don't know. Walter reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old photograph. In the picture, Evelyn Harper stood beside Walter near a train station, but another person stood partially hidden in the background. Snake tattoo. Eli cursed under his breath. He was watching her. Walter nodded slowly. The next night Evelyn vanished. Abby's small voice trembled. She really tried to come back for me. Walter looked at her sadly. Every single day. Abby broke down crying harder. Eli sat beside her awkwardly at first, then slowly placed one rough hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, kid," but Abby shook her head desperately. "No, it's not." Her tiny voice cracked apart. "I waited every night because I thought maybe she forgot me." Eli's chest tightened painfully. Children should never carry pain like that. Walter stared into the fire for a long moment before speaking again. "There's something else you should know." Eli looked up. "Hale isn't just after the notebook anymore." "What do you mean?" Walter's face turned grave. "He believes Evelyn hid stolen money before she disappeared." Eli frowned. "How much money?" "Nearly $2 million. Abby's eyes widened. "What?" Walter nodded. "Hale thinks your mother took it." "But did she?" Eli asked. Walter looked directly at Abby. "I think Evelyn hid it for one reason only. To protect her daughter." Suddenly headlights flashed outside again. All three froze instantly. But this time it wasn't one truck. It was several. Walter stood abruptly. "They found us." Outside, engines rumbled across the ranch property. Doors slammed. Men shouted. Eli rushed to the window carefully. At least 5 armed men surrounded the ranch house. And standing beside the lead truck was Victor Hale himself. Tall, expensive black coat, silver hair, cold eyes. He looked more like a wealthy politician than a criminal. But the rifle in his hands told a different story. "Well," Walter muttered darkly, "looks like the devil finally came himself." A loud voice echoed outside through the rain. "Eli Carter." Hale shouted. "Bring me the notebook and the girl. And maybe nobody dies tonight." Abby trembled violently. Eli looked at her, then at Walter, then back toward the armed men surrounding the ranch. He was outnumbered badly. Walter noticed the rifle in Eli's hands. "You still know how to shoot." Eli gave a tired smirk. "Better than most." Walter slowly loaded bullets into an old shotgun. "Good." Thunder cracked across the sky as armed men moved closer outside. Abby looked terrified. "What do we do?" Eli knelt beside her, and for the first time in years, his eyes no longer looked broken. They looked determined. "You trust me?" he asked. Abby nodded immediately. Eli stood slowly and checked the rifle chamber. Then he looked toward the dark windows where Victor Hale's men closed in through the storm. "Then no matter what happens tonight, I'm getting you out alive." Outside, Victor Hale smiled coldly. And the battle for Abby Harper had officially begun. The night the ranch burned, rain hammered against the ranch roof as Victor Hale's men surrounded the property from every side. Flashlights moved through the darkness like hunting wolves. Inside the farmhouse, tension choked the air. Walter loaded shells into his old shotgun with shaky hands while Eli checked every window carefully. Abby sat near the fireplace clutching Dusty so tightly the puppy whimpered softly. Outside, Victor Hale stepped forward beneath the rain. "You're making a mistake, Carter," he shouted. Eli pulled back the curtain slightly. "And you murdered innocent people," he yelled back. Victor smiled coldly. "Business requires sacrifice." Walter muttered angrily. "He talks like the devil himself." Victor raised his rifle casually. "Last chance. Give me the notebook." Eli looked at Abby. The little girl stared back with terrified eyes. Then Eli made a decision. "Walter," he whispered, "is there another way out?" The old man nodded slowly. "Storm cellar tunnel beneath the barn." "How far?" "Leads toward Black River." Eli's mind raced quickly. It was their only chance. Another gunshot exploded outside. Bang! A ranch window shattered instantly. Abby screamed. "Down!" Eli shouted. More bullets ripped through the farmhouse walls. Wood splintered everywhere. Victor Hale's men advanced across the muddy yard while firing nonstop. Eli returned fire through the broken window. Bang! One attacker dropped behind a fence screaming. Walter fired next. Boom! The shotgun blast echoed like thunder itself. Outside, Hale's men scattered briefly for cover. Move Abby to the kitchen. Walter barked. Eli grabbed Abby's hand. Hurry! They crouched low as bullets tore through the living room behind them. Dusty barked wildly. Smoke and gunpowder filled the air. What's happening? Abby cried. Bad men making bad choices, Eli muttered grimly. Suddenly, whoosh, flames erupted outside one window. They're setting the ranch on fire. Walter shouted. Victor Hale's voice roared from outside. If I can't have the notebook, then nobody leaves alive. Fire spread quickly across the dry wooden porch. Smoke began pouring inside. Abby started coughing violently. Eli's anger exploded. This ranch was all he had left of his old life. Every board, every fence, every memory of Clara. And now Hale was burning it all away without hesitation. Eli looked toward the wall where the old family photograph still hung crooked beside the fireplace. For years this house had felt empty. Dead, but somehow Abby's arrival had changed something inside him. And he refused to lose another family. Not tonight. Walter grabbed Eli's arm. Forget the house. Another window exploded inward from gunfire. Glass flew across the kitchen. Take Abby and go, Walter shouted. What about you? I'll hold them off. Eli shook his head instantly. No. Walter gave him a hard look. You don't have time to argue. Outside, men were already approaching the back of the ranch. The fire spread rapidly now. Ceiling beams creaked dangerously overhead. Abby looked between both men in panic. I don't want to leave anyone behind. Walter knelt painfully beside her. Listen carefully, sweetheart. His weathered face softened. Your mama trusted you to survive. Tears filled Abby's eyes instantly. Walter placed something small into her hand. A silver key. She told me if anything happened, this key belonged to you. Abby stared at it in confusion. What does it open? Walter looked toward Eli. The train station lockers. Eli's eyes widened. The station. Walter nodded grimly. Evelyn hid one final secret there. Before anyone could ask more. Crash. The front door burst open. Two armed men stormed inside through smoke and flames. Eli fired instantly. Bang. One man collapsed. Walter blasted the second attacker backward with the shotgun. But more voices shouted outside. They were running out of time fast. The tunnel. Walter yelled. Eli grabbed Abby and rushed toward the back kitchen door. Smoke burned their lungs as they sprinted through rain toward the barn. Behind them, flames swallowed the ranch house completely. The old home crackled like a dying giant beneath the storm. Abby looked back crying. Your house. Eli forced himself not to look. It's just wood. But deep inside, it felt like losing Clara all over again. They reached the barn moments before another truck pulled onto the property. Victor Hale stepped out personally this time. His cold eyes locked directly onto Abby. There she is. Abby froze in terror. Victor smiled faintly. You know, he called calmly, your mother caused all this. Liar. Abby screamed. Victor's expression darkened instantly. She stole from me. She was protecting me. Victor slowly raised his rifle. No, he said coldly. She was delaying the inevitable. Eli shoved Abby behind hay bales immediately. Gunfire erupted again. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets ripped through the barn walls. Horses screamed in panic inside nearby stalls. Walter fired from behind a tractor. Boom. One of Hale's men dropped into the mud. But then, bang. Walter suddenly staggered backward. Blood spread across his chest. Walter. Abby screamed. The old man collapsed hard beside the barn door. Victor Hale lowered his smoking rifle calmly. Eli's vision blurred with rage. Walter coughed painfully. Go, he whispered weakly. Please. Abby cried uncontrollably now, but Eli knew staying meant death. He grabbed Abby tightly and rushed toward the hidden cellar doors beneath loose hay. Victor Hale saw them immediately. Stop them. Eli yanked open the cellar entrance. Darkness waited below. He pushed Abby inside first, then jumped down after her just as bullets slammed into the wooden floor above. The tunnel was narrow, cold, and ancient. Only a small lantern dimly lit the path ahead. Behind them, the barn echoed with shouting and gunfire. Then suddenly, boom! A massive explosion shook the ground. Dust rained from the tunnel ceiling. Abby screamed. What was that? Eli looked back in horror. The barn had exploded, and Walter Grayson was still inside. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Abby's tiny voice broke apart in the darkness. He died helping us. Eli clenched his jaw painfully. Yes. The tunnel stretched ahead beneath the earth. Dark, silent, unknown, and somewhere behind them, Victor Hale was still hunting. But now this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was personal, very personal, because Eli Carter had finally found something worth fighting for again. And Victor Hale had just taken too much from him. The locker at Willow Creek Station. The tunnel smelled like wet earth and rust. Tiny drops of water fell from the ceiling as Eli and Abby moved through the darkness with only a weak lantern to guide them. Behind them, the distant sound of shouting echoed faintly through the underground passage. Victor Hale's men were still searching, still hunting. Abby walked silently beside Eli, clutching Dusty and the silver key Walter had given her. Her small face looked pale beneath the lantern glow. He really died, she whispered finally. Eli looked ahead without answering immediately. Walter Grayson's final moments replayed in his mind over and over. The gunshot, the explosion, the old man sacrificing himself so Abby could escape. Yes, Eli said quietly at last. Abby wiped tears from her cheeks. Why would he help me that much? Eli thought carefully before answering. Because your mama mattered to him. Abby lowered her eyes sadly. I barely remember my daddy anymore. The tunnel grew narrower as they walked. But I remember mama singing. Eli glanced down at her. What did she sing? Abby smiled weakly through tears. She always sang when storms came. For a moment, Eli remembered Clara doing the exact same thing years ago. Funny how grief connected strangers. Suddenly the tunnel ended at a rusted metal ladder leading upward. Eli pushed open the hatch carefully. Cold night air rushed inside. They emerged beside Black River nearly 2 miles from the ranch. Behind them in the distance, orange flames still lit the sky where Eli's home burned. Abby looked back sadly. You lost your house because of me. Eli shook his head instantly. No, but, listen carefully, kid. His voice softened. Bad people destroyed that house. Not you. Abby looked unconvinced. But before she could reply, Eli noticed headlights moving far away across the hills. Search parties. Victor Hale wasn't stopping. We need to move, Eli muttered. Where? Eli looked down at the silver key in Abby's hand. The train station. Nearly an hour later, they reached Willow Creek Station through back roads and empty alleyways. The town slept quietly beneath the fading storm. Most lights were off. Only the station building remained dimly lit beneath buzzing yellow lamps. Abby stopped near the entrance. This is where Mama told me to wait. Eli noticed the sadness in her voice now. Not hope anymore, just memory. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She loved you, Abby. The little girl nodded silently. Inside the station, everything looked empty. Old clocks ticked softly above the waiting area. The same wooden bench Abby sat on every night remained near the platform. Eli stared at it for a moment. Funny how life changes. A few nights ago he was a broken man waiting for nothing. Now he'd burned down the world protecting this child. Abby looked at the row of old storage lockers near the back wall. The key. Eli nodded. Try it. Abby's tiny hands trembled as she inserted the silver key into locker number 214. Click. The door slowly opened. Inside sat a small black duffel bag. Nothing else. Eli carefully removed it and unzipped the top. Both of them froze. Stacks of cash filled the bag completely. Bundles and bundles of money. Abby gasped. Oh my God. Eli quickly closed the bag again. Walter was right. $2 million. But underneath the money sat something even more important. A small tape recorder, and several cassette tapes labeled with dates. Eli frowned. What's this? Abby picked up one tape carefully. Mama's handwriting covered the label. If anything happens to me. Eli found an old cassette player sitting forgotten inside the station office nearby. Miraculously, it still worked. He inserted the tape slowly. Static crackled first. Then, Evelyn Harper's voice filled the empty station. Abby instantly covered her mouth. Mama. The recording sounded shaky and frightened. My name is Evelyn Harper. If you are hearing this, then Victor Hale probably found me. Everything written in the notebook is true. Victor Hale ordered the deaths of 3 ranch owners who refused to sell him land. Eli's expression darkened. The tape continued. My husband discovered Hale was laundering money through railroad shipments. When he threatened to expose him, Victor had him killed and made it look like an accident. Abby burst into tears. Dusty whimpered beside her. Evelyn's voice cracked emotionally on the tape. If I disappear, please protect my daughter. Abby deserves a real life, far away from this town. Then suddenly, a loud click echoed behind them. Eli spun around instantly. Victor Hale stood at the station entrance holding a revolver. And Snake Tattoo stood beside him smiling cruelly. Slowly, they clapped. Well, Victor said calmly. Looks like the truth finally came out. Abby gasped in terror. How did you find us? Victor smiled faintly. You really think you were the only people who knew about the locker? Eli stepped protectively in front of Abby. Victor walked slowly closer. You've caused me a great deal of trouble, Carter. You murdered innocent people. Victor shrugged without emotion. People die every day. The coldness in his voice made Abby shiver. Victor's eyes moved toward the duffel bag. Now hand me the money, the tapes, and the girl. Eli tightened his grip on the cassette recorder. Not happening. Snake Tattoo laughed. You're outnumbered again, old man. Victor sighed almost sadly. You know, Eli, I actually respected you once. Eli glared at him. Funny. I never respected cowards. Victor's eyes hardened instantly. Then something unexpected happened. Abby stepped forward. Tiny. Terrified. But brave. You killed my daddy, she whispered. Victor looked at her. Calmly. Your father made poor choices. You killed my mama too. For the first time, Victor hesitated slightly. Not guilt. Annoyance. As I said, he replied coldly, people die. Abby's tears turned into anger. Real anger. I hate you. Victor raised the revolver slowly. That's unfortunate. Eli moved instantly. He shoved Abby sideways just as. Bang. The gunshot exploded through the station. Glass shattered everywhere. Passengers sleeping nearby screamed in panic. Chaos erupted instantly, and the final fight for Abby Harper had begun. The train that changed everything. Bang. The gunshot echoed through Willow Creek Station like thunder. People screamed and dropped to the floor. Glass exploded across the waiting area. Eli shoved Abby behind a row of benches as Victor Hale's bullet smashed into the wall behind them. Run! Eli shouted. Snake Tattoo rushed forward immediately. But Eli grabbed the heavy metal luggage cart nearby and slammed it directly into him. Crash! The man flew backward into the ticket counter with a painful grunt. Victor Hale fired again. Bang! A station clock shattered overhead. Abby clutched Dusty tightly while crawling across the floor through broken glass. Her whole body shook with fear. But then, she remembered her mother's voice. When you're scared, keep moving. Eli tackled Snake Tattoo hard against the floor. The two men crashed through chairs as punches flew violently between them. Snake Tattoo pulled a knife. But Eli grabbed his wrist just in time. You just don't quit, the man snarled. Eli's face hardened with fury. You burned my home, He slammed the man's hand against the floor repeatedly until the knife dropped away. Meanwhile, Victor calmly reloaded his revolver. No panic, no hesitation, just cold patience. That terrified Abby more than yelling ever could. Victor slowly walked toward her. "It's over now," he said. Abby backed away crying. "You hurt everyone." Victor tilted his head slightly. "They chose to stand against me." Then he raised the gun directly at her. And suddenly, Dusty leapt forward barking wildly. The tiny white puppy bit Victor's pant leg fiercely. Victor cursed and stumbled backward in surprise. That tiny distraction saved Abby's life. Eli saw the opening instantly. With a roar of anger, he grabbed Snake Tattoo and threw him straight into Victor Hale. All three men crashed violently into the station platform doors. Victor's revolver slid across the floor. Abby spotted it immediately. So did Snake Tattoo. The man lunged toward the gun. But Abby grabbed it first. Her tiny hands trembled violently holding the heavy weapon. Snake Tattoo froze. Victor froze too. The station suddenly became silent except for distant train sounds approaching outside. Victor stared at Abby calmly. "You won't shoot." Abby's hands shook harder. Tears streamed down her face. "You killed my family." Victor stepped closer slowly. "And if you pull that trigger, you become like me." Abby hesitated, because deep down, she knew he was right. Eli slowly stood nearby, bruised and bleeding. "Abby," he said gently. "It's okay." Snake Tattoo suddenly moved again. Fast. He grabbed Abby's arm violently. The gun fired upward. Bang. People screamed again. Dusty barked furiously. Snake Tattoo twisted Abby's wrist painfully trying to steal the revolver. Until suddenly, a deafening train horn exploded through the station. The midnight train arrived at full speed beside the platform. Bright lights flooded the station windows. Snake Tattoo looked up for one fatal second. Eli charged forward with everything he had left. He tackled the man directly through the open platform doors. Both men crashed onto the wet edge beside the moving train. Snake Tattoo tried standing, but slipped on the rain-soaked platform. His scream disappeared beneath roaring steel wheels. Then silence. The train screeched to a halt. Passengers stared in horror through the windows. Victor Hale slowly backed away, realizing he was finally losing control. Police sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Someone inside the station had called for help. Victor looked toward the cassette tapes scattered across the floor. Evidence. Witnesses. The truth. For the first time all night, fear appeared in his eyes. He turned suddenly and ran toward the rear station exit. But Abby stepped forward. "Mama said bad people always run." Victor stopped briefly. Then Eli's voice came from behind him. "And good people finally stop being afraid." Victor spun around, straight into the barrels of 3 police rifles outside the station doors. "Drop the weapon," officers shouted. Victor Hale looked trapped, finished. Slowly, he raised his hands, and just like that, the most powerful man in Willow Creek fell. 3 months later, summer sunlight covered Willow Creek in gold. Children laughed near the town square. Stores reopened. People smiled again. Victor Hale's crimes had shocked the entire state. The cassette recordings and notebook exposed years of corruption, murder, and stolen money. Dozens of people connected to Hale were arrested. And for the first time in years, the town finally felt free. But none of that mattered much to Abby right now. Because today was special. Very special. "Dusty, slow down," she laughed. The little white puppy sprinted across green fields outside Eli's rebuilt ranch house. Yes, rebuilt. The community had helped Eli rebuild everything after the fire. Turns out people sometimes needed tragedy to remember kindness. Eli stepped onto the new porch carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He looked different now, lighter somehow. The sadness in his eyes no longer felt endless. Abby sat beside him swinging her legs happily from the porch steps. "You thinking again?" she asked. Eli smiled softly. "Maybe. About Clara." He nodded. "And your son?" That question hurt more. Because after the station incident, someone unexpected had returned. Daniel Carter, Eli's son. He had seen the news reports. Seen his father risking everything for a little girl he barely knew. And somehow, it reminded Daniel who his father truly was beneath all the grief. They weren't fully healed yet. But they were trying. Sometimes trying is enough. Abby leaned against Eli's shoulder. You know what Mama used to say? What? Broken hearts still work. Eli laughed quietly. That sounds like her. For a moment they sat peacefully beneath the warm Texas sky. Then Abby suddenly asked the question she'd carried silently for months. Do you think Mama knew I'd find you? Eli looked toward the horizon thoughtfully. Maybe Evelyn Harper had hoped. Maybe she prayed. Or maybe mothers simply know things the rest of the world doesn't. Finally he answered softly, I think she knew somebody would love you enough to stay. Abby smiled. Real. Safe. Happy. The kind of smile every child deserves. Dusty barked loudly while chasing butterflies across the yard. And somewhere beyond the fields, a distant train whistle echoed gently through Willow Creek one last time. But this time, Abby Harper wasn't waiting anymore. She was finally home. Sometimes the people who save us aren't family by blood. They're the ones who choose to stay when everyone else leaves. Heart, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more emotional stories.